That heart-touching bonding moment of Akira and Amon in this episode. That was sweet. That really was a sweet scene in this episode, and that scene was done justice. I have to hand it to the soundtrack for really making the tone of that Amon Akira scene just good. It was such a beautiful segment of this episode. So, this episode, doing a quick overview summary of it, it can be separated into two different segments, or actually kind of three if you think about it. You have the first part of the episode, you get to see how Kaneki is kind of breaking down, like he's just going insane pretty much, and there's lack of dialogue in Kaneki, so once again, we're getting some form of detachment to Kaneki as a character once again in this episode. The other segment, you get to see how CCG is starting to mobilize against Eye Patch, and you see it to where Akira and Amon are having a little bit of connection in this episode, and then you have it to where on the other scene of the episode, you have it to where we have Juzo and his, development and finding out more about his past. And so, I want to dive into the Juzo segment first, because that segment is what I really want to talk about. So, this first part of this episode, like less than 4 or 5 minutes into the episode, we get to see Juzo's backstory. The thing is, with his backstory, it's probably going to be very hard to understand if you're an anime-only watcher, because there was a lot of censors. Like, I noticed the censorship in the past couple episodes, but I mean, it wasn't nothing too bad. It wasn't so bad and obvious. But I mean, with this episode, like, the majority of the screen was covered in black, like black bars through like 10 to 15 seconds total time in just one different censored area, and it was one after another. So the censorship of this episode, oh yes, if you hated the censorship from the last season, you're gonna hate this episode. Like, straight up, you're gonna hate the first part, because the censorship, yeah. The thing is, okay, with the censorship, I know what they are blocking out since I am a manga reader, and from what I can tell from the censorship and what they censored, it looks like it actually needed to be censored, because the violence in that scene, I understand why it was censored. Let me go into details and explain that scene if you do not understand, if you're an anime-only watcher. So there was a scene where you see Suzuya dragged into a cell, and he was thrown into the cell, and you see this ghoul, like his mother called Big Madam, watching over him, and she grabs these like pliers, these like torture pliers, and she looks at, Suzuya in this episode, in the flashback. And all of a sudden, you see how she says, like, it's time, and all that, and you see this black, bar cover the entire screen, and you see, Suzuya scream, and you see his eyes and all that dilate and stuff like that. Now, I'm just gonna let you know exactly what was happening in that scene for you can all understand as anime-only watchers, because the censorship and the way they explained it with the subtitles and stuff, you couldn't really understand what was going on in that scene, so I'm just going to explain it to you. So, in that scene, Big Madam pretty much destroyed Suzuya's balls. That's pretty much what happened. She crushed and destroyed his balls. Just getting straight to the point there. That's pretty much what happened in that segment, and with the censorship. And it shows you what type of torture and how detached he was from humanity through his backstory. So, they got and nailed the backstory of Suzuya pretty good, they did. Besides the censorship that blocked out a lot of things that made it very, easy to understand. For instance, if you didn't have the censorship, you would have been able to understand that beautifully. But with the censorship, you couldn't really understand it. So, hopefully I cleared that up for all of you. But that scene and that segment was to show you why Suzuya is kind of slightly like a psychopath, because he was raised by ghouls, and he was tortured, and he was forced to kill other people as a scrapper. As we know what happened in the gourmet, fight or whatever from the first season, when you see, Shu having people fight, like Kaneki fight and all that, and you saw the big dude that was a scrapper. Well, Suzuya was also a scrapper that pretty much was working for Big Madam. And you can see what happened. He was forced to kill people for fun, for entertainment by the ghouls. And so, he was just used as a pet for entertainment. So, moving past that, the episode, getting into the second half, of the episode, the overall segment with Kaneki, that's something I do want to dive into. Now, Kaneki, once again in this episode, he is pretty much just thrown out of the episode. Like, this episode, or this series, Season 2, has pretty much made Kaneki, not even have any presence at all. Like, his voice actor is almost non-existent. I bet the voice actor's kind of angry about that, because he's not probably getting as paid as well as he was in Season 1. But either way, regardless of that, the Kaneki segment, or the two little scenes, it was very short, less than a minute in total time, if I'm correct. The Kaneki like, segment of this episode, I see what they're trying to do. They were trying to let us know that Kaneki is a half Kakuja ghoul. For instance, he has a half Kakuja. He's not a complete Kakuja like, you know, other well-known ghouls like Jason was in the last season. And with this, to become a Kakuja ghoul type ghoul, you have to eat and cannibalize other ghouls. They tried to explain that at the beginning of the episode, but honestly, it felt like the overall explanation on that was rather weak, because here's my point of view on it. It wasn't really foreshadowed or hinted at, besides Jason that got ate at the end of the last season. It wasn't really hinted that Kaneki was continuously eating ghoul after ghoul, and so I don't know how I personally feel about this overall circumstance, because Kaneki now, with this explanation, they're probably just making us have to accept that he just ate a ghoul or two and, you know, he transformed into a centipede, and along with him, you know, going slightly mad or crazy, like he can't control his ability, and that's pretty obvious in this episode, so let's dive into that. So, Kaneki, his, like, centipede mode was constantly coming out. You see how he was going crazy in this episode. And anime-onlys will probably look at it as like, oh, he can't control his power. Okay, I mean, standard type of thing you would see in a shonen. Honestly, let's be real here. That's something you'd standardly see in a shonen. And as I said, they really haven't explained it like they should. And I'm kind of disappointed in that, because there really needs to be more explanation on this, because it's like they're trying to rip out the inner monologues and narrations of Kaneki when he was going into madness in these segments, just to, you know, put in screaming of him, you know, losing control. That's what they did. So, hopefully, like I've been saying for the past 2 episodes, I really, really hope we get a flashback for what has been going on with Kaneki on his side, because it really needs to be done, or it's just, yeah, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So, getting into the next segment of the episode, we have it toward the Amon and Akira scene of this episode. We see how Akira truly feels about Amon in this episode, and for the most part, it's pretty obvious. We kind of all knew how Akira really felt about Amon, kind of. I mean, it was kind of obvious the way she treated him, acted towards him, and her dialogue towards him. It was pretty obvious she kind of had some form of hatred towards him, because she kind of blames him for her father's death, you know, because the rabbit killed him. And Amon actually accepts this blame from Akira, like, yes, I'm the one that did it, I have nightmares every night, and it just shows you some maturity in Amon and how he actually reflects and regrets what happened to his mentor, his fellow subordinate he used to work with all the time. And to see this, you know, represented in this episode, I feel like, you know, this episode was portrayed properly when it came to that Amon Akira scene. Like, the soundtrack, best. Like, oh, dude, the soundtrack of Tokyo Ghoul Season 2, I've been saying it repeatedly, and I will continue to say it, because that soundtrack, the new songs and all the different soundtracks they've been using, like that, the English songs and stuff like that, at the end of the episode, it really just gives you those feels. It does, because I just love the slow, tragic sounding music that really complements these, like, you know, tones in the episodes. Very dark and mysterious tones that really help the atmosphere. And that was what Season 1 of Tokyo Ghoul really lacked. And I just love it how this season has really tried to show you the darker type tones of Tokyo Ghoul. And this episode can be served as character development, especially with this Akira, you know, Amon scene. It was character development for them to grow closer as subordinates or partners, and that's pretty much what you can pull out of this episode. So, the main things you can get out of this episode is CCG is going after Al. They realize Al is connected with, you know, Ogiri Tree. You have it to where Amon and Akira grow closer as a partner because, you know, they had their, like, little bit of talk, PR connection. And then we also have it to where Kaneki, he becomes the Eye Patch Ghoul. That's a double S rated ghoul, as we saw in this episode. And then you have it to where Suzuya gets his backstory fleshed out. And that's pretty much the episode. So tell me your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or not wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.